The 2014-2015 highly pathogenic avian influenza (HPAI) outbreak in the U.S. is the largest animal health emergency in the country's history. In less than 6 months, over 48 million birds on 219 premises from the Pacific Northwest to the Midwest either died or were depopulated due to infection with HPAI virus. Epidemiologists believe that the virus was initially introduced by wild migratory waterfowl and was later spread by people from farm to farm. Avian influenza virus is excreted through the feces, nasal, and oral secretions of infected birds and spread within a flock by direct contact between healthy and infected birds and from farm to farm through contaminated people, vehicles, and equipment. Because of this, biosecurity on an individual farm is essential. What is biosecurity? Biosecurity refers to procedures used to prevent the introduction and spread of disease-causing organisms in poultry flocks. The following video will provide best practices to improve biosecurity on your farm and protect your birds from exposure to avian influenza and other infectious diseases. It is important for you to provide adequate training on these biosecurity and disease prevention measures to whomever has access to the farm, including family members. Prevention. Understanding how the avian influenza virus is transmitted is your first step in protecting your farm. Ask your vendor to notify you just prior to arrival to make sure they do not enter your property without practicing good biosecurity. Contaminated vehicles and personnel pose the most significant threat to the health of your flock. Restrict vehicle access by maintaining gates or barriers. Clearly post "Restricted," "No admittance," or similar signs at driveway entrances. Do not allow vendor vehicles or non-essential visitors in or near the poultry houses. Vehicles should be parked off premises when possible. If vehicles must be close to the houses, keep them away from ventilation fans. Vehicle windows must be closed to reduce contaminants and insects from entering the vehicle. Keep a record of essential visitors indicating their names, company or affiliation, address, telephone, and last place visited. This will be valuable information when tracing the source of infection if another outbreak should occur. Biosecurity for visitors requires essential visitors such as repairmen and service personnel to comply with your biosecurity procedures. Proper biosecurity procedures should include boot covers, disposable protective coveralls, head cover and gloves for all visitors prior to being allowed inside a poultry house. Service vehicles must be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected before entering the farm premises. Tools and equipment must be cleaned and disinfected before entering and upon leaving a poultry house. Have a clean and functioning foot bath at each entrance to the chicken house. Personal biosecurity. Biosecurity procedures applies to more than just visitors and service personnel. Protect yourself from becoming a transmission source of the virus by wearing protective clothing, including shoes, boots, head cover, and gloves, when caring for flocks. This protective clothing must be separate and different from the clothing worn off the farm. After caring for the flock, remove protective clothing and equipment and wash hands and arms before leaving premises. Animal husbandry and management. Migratory waterfowl serve as natural reservoirs for avian influenza virus. These birds harbor the virus without getting sick, but can shed the virus and infect domestic poultry such as chicken and turkeys. Because of this, it is important to protect your poultry flock from coming into contact with wild or migratory birds or their manure droppings. As an added preventive measure, keep your poultry away from any source of water that may have been contaminated by wild birds, such as ponds, natural or man-made lakes, rivers, or even wet areas caused by rain near the poultry houses. Make sure feed and water sources are covered and free of contaminants, limiting the attraction of wildfowl and pests. Properly dispose of dead birds using methods such as composting or on-farm freezers approved by your company veterinarian, state veterinarian, or animal health authority. Poor disposal can lead to disease and increase the number of flies and scavengers, which increases the risk of transmission and transportation of the virus. Prevention starts with you. Maintaining the hygiene of your skin, shoes, clothing, and vehicles can reduce your risk of transporting the virus. Make sure you shower and change into a clean set of clothing and footwear prior to attending a meeting or the local gathering spot, such as restaurants or stores. Use a vehicle that is not used on your farm when traveling to a meeting or any destination. Too often, manure is carried to these non-farm locations where it can be picked up by other growers. Avoid visiting other poultry grower locations if possible. It is a good biosecurity practice to disinfect footwear and vehicle floor mats and change your clothing after returning from a poultry grower's meeting. Use different clothing, footwear, and vehicle to re-enter your poultry operation. Commercial poultry companies have a vested interest in preventing the transmission of the avian influenza virus. It is vital that commercial poultry companies mandate the consistent application of these biosecurity measures internally and require the same compliance from vendors and visitors. As you adhere to these biosecurity measures, you can feel confident knowing you are helping to prevent your farm and poultry farms nationwide from avian influenza and other infectious and economically devastating diseases.